If you don't have children, there is a practical question that tends to stay unresolved in the background of life. It usually isn't urgent, and daily routines make it easy to move past it without stopping. But over time, maybe in a quiet moment, or when something in your health shifts even slightly, it becomes harder to ignore. The question that emerges is simple, but it carries weight. Who will actually be there when I can't manage everything alone anymore? For many years, independence works well enough. You handle your responsibilities, manage your life, and make decisions without needing to rely on anyone else. This creates a sense of stability that feels earned and familiar. The problem is not that something suddenly breaks, but that the future begins to look less clearly structured than it once did. You may have people around you and still notice that there is no shared framework holding things together. Friends and acquaintances come and go. Neighbors are friendly enough. But there is no built-in system that naturally organizes care, continuity, and mutual responsibility. Society rarely offers alternatives, because most cultural scripts assume children will eventually fill that role. If you grew up around images of family, holidays, decision-making in crises, someone knowing your medical history without being asked, those pictures almost always included adult sons and daughters stepping in at crucial moments. This situation is far more common than it appears. Many people reach later adulthood without children, sometimes by choice and sometimes through circumstances they never planned. The real difficulty is not the absence of children themselves, but the absence of a ready-made structure that usually grows around them. When that structure is missing, the weight of planning and sustaining connection falls entirely on you. This audiobook is not about accepting isolation or lowering your expectations for connection. The human brain depends on meaningful social bonds. Research that followed hundreds of thousands of adults over decades shows this with remarkable clarity. People who are socially isolated face a significantly higher risk of leaving life earlier than they otherwise might. But here's what matters more for your situation right now. Strong friendships in your 50s, 60s, and beyond are linked to better physical health, lower rates of stroke, and a higher likelihood of staying mentally sharp and engaged. That need for connection does not disappear when your birthday passes a certain number. It remains just as real, just as biological, just as necessary. What changes is that those bonds no longer form automatically and have to be built deliberately. Here is what most people never discover until it is too late. The kind of family you choose and build on purpose can become just as protective and just as powerful as the kind you inherit by birth. Researchers who study aging without children have found that people in your situation do not simply vanish into isolation by some inevitable law. Instead, they rely on friends, neighbors, people they have gathered around them, and yes, sometimes on professional services. But the key is that these connections are chosen, maintained, and honored. The difference is that most people stumble into this arrangement without a plan, and then wonder why it feels fragile. You will learn in the pages ahead how to build it deliberately. This is not an abstract self-help book about feelings or mindset. Every chapter is built around a specific problem that childless adults face, an honest explanation of why that problem exists, and then concrete, actionable steps you can take. Not someday, but today. You will discover how to recognize people in your world who could genuinely become part of a chosen family. You will learn how to deepen friendships in ways that feel natural, not forced or desperate. You will design a simple system of mutual help so that key responsibilities are shared rather than silently assumed or left to chance. You will also face the difficult topics directly. What happens when your body or mind changes and independence is no longer unlimited. How to talk about these things without shame. How to ask for help in a way that does not make you feel like you are begging. How to listen to someone else's needs without burning out. These are not conversations most people have with their parents or with society. But they are conversations you will need to have with yourself first, and then with the people you want to have in your circle. None of this requires you to become someone different than you are. You do not need to suddenly become social or extroverted if that has never been your nature. You do not need to collect dozens of friends or perform constant emotional labor. What you need is clarity about what you actually have, honesty about what is missing, and willingness to take one small step at a time. That willingness is already visible in the fact that you are listening. Most people avoid this topic entirely. They prefer the discomfort of uncertainty to the work of building something new. Not you. You are willing to look at what is actually in front of you and to ask, how do I want to live the next 20 or 30 years? What would real support look like, designed specifically for me? That clarity is the starting point. Everything that follows builds from there. Chapter 1. The Invisible Generation. The numbers speak quietly, but they speak clearly. Across the United States and most developed countries, there is now a generation of people in their 50s, 60s, and beyond who do not have children. This is not a small group. 1 in 6 older Americans, that amounts to approximately 15.2 million people, fall into this category. In some places, the numbers are even more striking. In Japan, which has been experiencing these demographic shifts longer than most countries, about 27% of women born in 1970 never had children. In Spain, Italy, and Austria, permanent childlessness among women born in 1975 stands at above 20%. And the trend is accelerating. In the United States, the share of women ages 35 to 44 who report having no children rose from 16.1% in 2012 to 20% by 2022. Among younger women, the numbers are even more dramatic. About 85% of women ages 20 to 24 today have not had children, compared to 75% just 1 decade ago. Researchers estimate that 5.7 million more women in their primary childbearing years are childless than historical trends would have predicted. This is the invisible generation. Invisible not because they are silent, but because the larger world has never quite developed a language to talk about them, or a structure to accommodate them. The reasons for this shift are varied and real. The cost of raising a child to adulthood now exceeds $400,000. Housing prices have become prohibitive for many. Childcare costs have skyrocketed. For women especially, the choice to delay or forego children often comes alongside opportunities that previous generations did not have. Advanced education, meaningful careers, financial independence. In other places, childlessness came through no choice at all. Infertility, the absence of a willing partner, circumstances that simply did not align. In East Asia, the pattern looks different, but is just as consequential. In Japan and South Korea, where having children outside of marriage remains culturally rare, childlessness is closely tied to rising rates of singlehood and delayed marriage. Women postpone marriage for education and career, and those delays often extend into infertility. The problem is compounded by workplace expectations and cultural attitudes that can make motherhood and sustained professional advancement feel like an impossible choice. What is important to understand is this: childlessness has become a structural reality of modern life, not a personal failure. It is not caused by selfishness or by broken people. It is produced by economic systems, by changing opportunities, by demographic patterns that are reshaping the entire developed world. The United States Census Bureau, after tracking these trends, came to a stark conclusion. The primary driver of declining birth rates in America is not that women are having fewer children per family. It is that a rising share of women are having no children at all. And yet, even though this is happening to millions of people simultaneously, almost no one talks about what comes next. The cultural silence on this topic is deafening. When you grow up in a family, you absorbed 1,000 small lessons about how later life would work. You probably watched grandparents become central to holiday planning and daily coordination. You heard stories about your parents calling on siblings when things got difficult. You may have experienced the simple fact that when something happened to your mother or father, there were already people on standby who were legally and emotionally bound to step in. A parent in need did not need to schedule help in advance. A crisis did not require a group project. For the childless, none of that infrastructure is waiting in the wings. And this is where the real problem emerges. The question that most people do not ask out loud until it arrives uninvited. It usually happens quietly at first. A diagnosis, a moment of physical limitation, a sleepless night when the arithmetic of aging suddenly becomes concrete instead of abstract. And in that moment, the question becomes unavoidable. If my body changes, if my mind becomes less reliable, if I find myself alone with a decision that is too large for one person to hold, who will be here? This is not paranoia. This is not catastrophizing. Researchers who study aging have confirmed that adults without children do face specific vulnerabilities. They have fewer sources of informal caregiving within immediate family. They are more likely to live alone than their peers with children. About 40% of childless older adults live alone, compared to about 20% of parents. When something goes wrong, the responsibility for coordination and care falls entirely on them, or on a network that must be built deliberately. But here is what the research also reveals, and it is important. Childless adults are not automatically destined for a worse life in later years. In fact, many of them have significant advantages. They are more likely to have higher educational attainment and higher personal net worth. They are more likely to be part of the workforce. They have the resources and the autonomy to make choices about how to structure their later lives. And this is where the story changes direction. The real question is not whether childless adults can survive alone. Many are more than capable of that. The question is whether surviving alone is actually what you want or what your biology can sustain. Because here is what neuroscience has made increasingly clear. The human brain was not designed to age in isolation. Large analyses of hundreds of thousands of people over decades have shown that social isolation carries a health risk equivalent to smoking. Isolated people have significantly higher rates of leaving life earlier than their peers. This is not about being lonely in a sentimental sense. It is about the fact that your nervous system, your immune system, and your brain's ability to stay sharp all depend on having reliable social contact and a sense of belonging. The good news, and it is important that you hear this clearly, is that this protective effect does not require children. Research specifically examining friendships in midlife and later adulthood has found that strong friendships are linked to longer life, better physical health, lower rates of stroke, and better cognitive function. What matters biologically is not whether your connections are based on blood. What matters is that the connections exist, that they are reliable, and that you participate in them regularly. In other words, the kind of family you build on purpose can be just as protective as the kind you inherit by accident of birth. But And this is the critical turn in the story. Most childless adults do not know how to build that deliberately. They drift along with good intentions, with a few people they like and stay in touch with, without any actual structure. And then, somewhere around 60, or 65, or 70, they look around and realize that what they have built is not enough. The realization usually comes too late to fix it easily. This is where you are different. You are already asking the question. You are already looking ahead, instead of assuming it will somehow resolve itself. And that willingness to plan, rather than to hope, is the first real step toward building something sturdy. The person who built this deliberately never waited until crisis forced their hand. They asked themselves, while still capable and independent, what kind of support do I actually need? Who could that come from? And how do I build that relationship now, before I need to ask for anything? That is the work of the chapters ahead. This chapter has painted a picture of a real problem. Millions of people are entering later adulthood without children, without an automatic family structure, and without much guidance on what comes next. You are one of them. That is a fact, not a failure. But a fact is not the same as a destiny. Here is what you do in the next 24 hours. Write down your own version of the question that started this chapter. Not my version. Your version. Who will be here when? And then complete it honestly. What scenario worries you most? A health crisis? A fall? A time when you cannot make decisions alone? Financial chaos? Cognitive decline? Do not shy away from naming it. Write it down. One sentence, maybe two. Just get it out of your head and onto paper where you can see it clearly. Then, read it back to yourself. Notice how it feels. The goal is not to solve it right now. The goal is to be honest about what you are actually worried about, instead of letting that worry float around invisibly in the background of your thinking. Most people skip this step. They think, I don't want to think about that right now. And so they don't. And so that unspoken fear never gets examined, never gets addressed, and quietly shapes their choices for years. You are going to be different. What you have just learned is that your situation is real, shared by millions, and shaped by larger forces beyond your control. But what you have also learned, and this is just as important, is that your future is not determined by whether you have children. It is determined by whether you deliberately build the kinds of connections that matter. The next chapter is about why those connections are not optional. It is about what happens in your brain when you are connected to other people, and what happens when you are not. And then we move into what to do about it. But first, you have a sentence to write. Do that now, while you are thinking about it. Chapter 2. Why your brain needs connection, even without children. Here is something that most people do not think about, even though it shapes their entire experience of later life. Your brain was not designed to age in isolation. It was designed to be part of a group. And when it is not, something shifts at a level deeper than emotion or preference. Something shifts in the actual wiring and chemistry of how your brain functions. You may have heard the phrase, loneliness is bad for you. It probably sounds like conventional wisdom, the kind of thing someone would say over coffee without really meaning it. But the science behind that phrase is far more serious than most people realize. Researchers have been studying this for decades, and what they have found is striking. When you are isolated, when you do not have reliable social contact, when you do not feel like you belong to anyone or to any group, your body enters a kind of low-level stress state. Your cortisol levels, which are stress hormones, remain elevated. Your immune system does not function as well as it should. Inflammation in your body increases, your sleep becomes less restorative, and your brain, which depends on all of those systems running smoothly, begins to show signs of wear. Over time, this matters enormously. Studies of older adults have found that chronic loneliness is linked to faster cognitive decline, higher risk of dementia, and measurably worse memory and attention. It is not that lonely people suddenly become confused. It is that the rate at which their thinking abilities fade is significantly accelerated. Someone who is socially connected can maintain clarity and sharpness into their 80s and beyond. Someone who is isolated may begin to lose those capacities a decade earlier. The opposite is also true, and this is important to understand. When you are connected to other people, when you have conversations, when you feel like you matter to someone, when you experience being known and valued, your brain chemistry shifts in a protective direction. A hormone called oxytocin is released. This is sometimes called the bonding hormone, but that name makes it sound softer and less consequential than it actually is. Oxytocin does more than make you feel warm and fuzzy. It actively reduces your stress response. It calms your nervous system. It tells your body that you are safe. When oxytocin levels are elevated through regular social contact, your immune system works better. Your inflammation decreases. Your heart rate variability, a marker of how well your nervous system is regulating itself, improves. Your sleep becomes deeper and more restorative. And your brain, now working in an environment of safety instead of threat, begins to function more efficiently. Memory stays sharper. Decision-making becomes clearer. The rate of cognitive decline slows down. This is not a small effect. Research examining longevity and social connection has found that the protective power of strong social bonds is comparable to stopping smoking and greater than exercise or diet in terms of predicting how long you will live and how well you will function. In other words, the difference between a life spent largely alone and a life spent with reliable human connection may be a decade or more of healthy, functional years. Now, here's the crucial part. This protective effect does not require that you have children. It does not require that you have a spouse. It does not require that you are surrounded by family all the time. What it requires is that you have reliable people, regular contact, a sense that you belong somewhere, people who know your name and care about your well-being, people you can call when something matters. The human brain counts connection differently than you might expect. It does not really care whether the connection is biological or chosen. Your nervous system registers safety the same way whether it is with a daughter or with a friend you have known for 30 years. What matters is consistency. What matters is that the connection is real, not occasional, not performative, but actually present in your life. But there is something else happening here. Something that makes this especially important for you right now, in this moment of your life. Your brain is not going to get less dependent on connection as you age. It is going to become more dependent. The friendships and the networks you build now are not just nice to have. They are an investment in the most basic architecture of how you will function 5, 10, 20 years from now. Think about it this way. When you were 30, your brain could probably tolerate some isolation. You had work, you had projects, you had energy. Your immune system was robust. If you spent a few months without much social contact, you probably bounced back without lasting damage. But as your brain ages, as your brain changes, this capacity shrinks. An older brain that has been isolated for months or years does not bounce back the way a younger brain does. the damage compounds. The protective factors that could have accumulated are absent. Conversely, an older brain that has been regularly exercised through social connection, that has had years to build those oxytocin pathways, that has practiced belonging, is significantly more resilient. When something goes wrong, when a crisis arrives, when you need to call on those connections, they are there. They are not theoretical. They are not things you have been meaning to build. They are already part of how your brain and body work. This is also true at the level of practical help, when your brain is connected to a network of reliable people. When you have practiced asking for help and receiving it, when you have built habits of mutual care, something shifts in your survival capacity. You do not panic as easily when something goes wrong. You have people to call. You have a system. Your nervous system itself registers this as safety, which means you make better decisions even in moments of crisis. Here is what researchers have noticed when they study older adults without children. The ones who stay healthy and engaged, the ones who maintain sharp minds and full lives into their 80s, are not the ones with the most money or the best individual health habits. They are the ones with reliable social connections. They are the ones who have built relationships that can sustain them. The ones who struggle are often not struggling because they lack resources. They are struggling because they are alone. And the hardest part about this is that by the time you really understand what you needed, it is often too late to build it easily. The person who started building these connections at 55 is vastly better positioned than the person who started at 70. Not because the 70-year-old cannot build connections, they can. But because the brain that has spent decades receiving regular social input, decades of oxytocin release, decades of practicing belonging, is biologically different from one that has not. This does not mean you have to transform into someone you are not. You do not need to become highly social or to constantly be around people. What it means is that you need to be intentional about building a few reliable connections, not dozens. Just a few people who know you, who you can trust, who you stay in regular contact with. The good news is that this is entirely within your control. You cannot control whether you have children. You cannot control many of the circumstances of your life. But you can control whether you build and maintain meaningful connections. You can control whether you practice asking for help. You can control whether you show up for other people. And when you do those things, your brain changes. Your body changes. Your actual capacity to navigate later life changes. The question then is not whether this matters. The question is whether you are going to start building it now, or whether you are going to wait until crisis forces your hand. Think of 3 people in your life right now with whom you have genuine, honest contact. Not people you follow on social media. Not people you see once a year. Think of people you have actually talked to in the last month or 2. People with whom you felt something real. Write down their names. Just 3. Do not overthink it. Who comes to mind? Now pick one and send them a message. Not a casual, "Hey, how are you?" Not a performative check-in. Send them something real. Tell them something you have been thinking about. Ask them a genuine question. Reference something from your last conversation together. The goal is not to make plans. The goal is to create a moment of real contact, a moment in which both of you know that you are actually present with each other. That is it. One real message to one person who matters to you. Most people skip this step. They think, "I will do that later." And later never comes. You are not going to do that. You are going to do it now, while you are thinking about it, while the understanding of why this matters is fresh. Chapter 3. What is a chosen family, really? You have heard the phrase before. Chosen family. It appears in magazines and on social media, usually paired with photos of friends laughing together or sitting around a dinner table. It sounds warm. It sounds intentional. But most people do not actually understand what it means, or how it differs from simply having friends. Here is the distinction that matters. A friend is someone you like and see sometimes. A chosen family is someone you have bound yourself to through reliability and presence. It is someone who knows not just your surface, but the deeper patterns of who you are. It is someone who you have agreed, implicitly or explicitly, to show up for. And someone who has agreed to show up for you. The difference might seem subtle, but it is everything. You can have dozens of friends and still be isolated. You can have good people in your life and still feel like you do not belong to anyone. What makes something a chosen family is not the number of people, but the quality of mutual commitment. It is the sense that we are in this together, that we know each other's struggles, that when one of us needs something, we do not pretend it is someone else's problem. This is not something that happens naturally or automatically in adulthood. It requires intention. It requires conversation. It requires people who are willing to say, "This relationship matters to me, and I am going to act like it matters." One of the most striking examples of this comes from the work of Milton Erickson, a psychiatrist who understood something fundamental about loneliness and connection. There was a woman living alone in Wyoming who came to him in a state of depression. She had withdrawn from life. She had few people around her. She felt like she had no purpose and no place in the world. Erickson could have given her therapy in the traditional sense. Instead, he gave her an assignment: grow African violets, learn how to care for them, and keep them alive. At first, the woman thought he was avoiding the real issue. But she did what he suggested. She began to grow violets, and they flourished under her care. And then something unexpected happened. She began to give them away to neighbors, to people at church, to acquaintances, always with care instructions and attention. People began to seek her out, not just for the flowers, but to ask how to keep them alive. They began stopping by to visit, checking in on her, making her part of their weekly routines. A woman who had been profoundly isolated slowly became woven into the fabric of her community. Not through therapy or willpower or positive thinking, but through the simple act of creating something that made her necessary to other people. This is what a chosen family looks like in practice. It is not a group of people who suddenly decide they love each other equally. It is a network built through repeated small acts of care, through showing up consistently, through having skills or presence or attention that other people value. It is about becoming someone who matters in someone else's life. The LGBTQ community has been building chosen families for decades, out of necessity. Many people who came out found themselves abandoned by biological family. So they created their own. They created rituals. They created houses. They created lines of care and mutual responsibility. They organized around health crises, showed up at funerals, became legally responsible for each other's estates. What they built was not a friendship group. It was a family. And it was as real and as binding as any family created by blood. Immigrant communities do the same thing. When people move to a new country, they often find themselves separated from biological family by thousands of miles. So they create family with people who speak their language, who share their culture, who understand what they have lost. These families are often more present and more reliable than distant relatives who live far away. Single people who have built lives without children often do the same thing. They choose 3 or 4 people. They commit to them. They become the people who know about the difficult times. They become the people who are called first when something matters. They become accountable to each other. But here is the important part. This does not happen by accident. It happens because someone at some point says, "This relationship is not casual. This is real. We are building something together." You may look at your life right now and think, "I do not have a chosen family. I have some people I like. I have people I see sometimes. I have colleagues and acquaintances. But I do not have that deep, mutual, I am bound to you kind of relationship with anyone." If that is true, you are not alone. Most people in their 50s and 60s feel exactly this way. They have drifted through life with good intentions, without any deliberate structure. And so they find themselves in a position where there is no one who really knows them, no one who has committed to them. The tragedy is not that such relationships do not exist. The tragedy is that most people never learn to build them intentionally. So here is what you need to know. A chosen family does not require that you start from scratch. It does not require that you suddenly become someone different. It requires that you look at the people who are already in your life and ask, with whom could this become something deeper? With whom do I feel seen? With whom do I feel like I could be honest? Who makes me feel like I matter? Start there. Do not try to build a chosen family with people you do not actually like or do not actually trust. That is not a chosen family. That is an obligation. A real chosen family is built with people you genuinely want to know better. People you are willing to invest time in. The woman with the violets did not create a chosen family with Erickson's intervention. What Erickson did was give her a structure. He gave her a reason to be needed. He gave her a practice that naturally led to connection. The chosen family grew out of that. It grew because people began to see her as someone who mattered, someone who had something to offer, someone worth showing up for. That is always how it works. You do not build a chosen family by asking people to be your family. You build it by becoming someone who is needed, by showing up consistently, by knowing things about people that other people do not know, by being reliable, by being present. This takes time. It takes vulnerability. It takes a willingness to say, "I care about you and I want to know you better." It takes a willingness to ask for help. It takes a willingness to offer help, even when it is inconvenient. But it is entirely possible. And it is, in fact, the only way to ensure that later life is not lived in isolation. Here is the hard truth. If you wait for a chosen family to appear, if you wait for people to show up and commit to you without you showing up and committing to them first, it will not happen. The people you need to build with are not mind readers. They do not know that you are lonely unless you tell them. They do not know that you want a deeper relationship unless you act like you do. So the question becomes, are you willing to be the person who makes the first move? Think about the woman with the violets. She could have stayed isolated. She could have decided that her situation was permanent, that she was too far gone, that no one would ever care. Instead, she grew flowers. She gave them away. She created a reason for people to engage with her. And in doing that, she created the conditions for a chosen family to form. You can do the same, not necessarily with violets, but with something. With your skills, your attention, your presence, your willingness to know people and be known by them. This is the foundation of everything that comes next in this book. Everything that follows assumes that you have or are willing to build a chosen family. Because without it, all the other planning and structure will not matter. You need the people first. Everything else flows from that. Think of one person in your life with whom you would like to have a deeper relationship. Someone you like, but who is not yet in the category of someone you turn to when things matter. Just one person. Write down their name. Now, think of one reason why this relationship could deepen. What do you have in common? What could you do together? What could you offer them? What could they offer you? Is there a skill you have that they might value? Is there something you are interested in that they might also care about? Do not overthink this. Just identify one small, concrete way that you could create more regular contact with this person. Maybe it is a weekly coffee. Maybe it is a shared project. Maybe it is sending them an article about something they care about. Maybe it is volunteering together. Maybe it is simply scheduling a regular conversation. Choose one, and in the next week, initiate it. Not someday. Not when you feel ready. Not when the timing is perfect. This week. Tell this person, I have really enjoyed getting to know you better, and I would like to spend more time together. Would you be interested in doing this with me? That is it. You are not asking them to be your chosen family. You are simply creating the conditions for a deeper relationship to develop. You are doing what the woman with the violets did. You are giving them a reason to say yes. Chapter 4. How to Deepen Friendships After 50. By now, you understand that connection is not optional. You understand that a chosen family is built, not found. But understanding the theory is different from actually doing the work. This is where most people get stuck. They know they should build deeper friendships, but they do not know how. They think that friendships either happen naturally or they do not happen at all. They believe that trying to deepen a friendship will make them seem needy or pushy. This is where the research gives us something concrete and reassuring. There is a pattern to how friendships deepen after 50, and it does not require you to become someone you are not. It just requires intention and consistency. Let me start with what researchers have found. A team at the University of Oxford examining the structure of successful friendships found that maintaining a core group of 5 close relationships requires regular investment. Not occasional contact, not seeing them once a year. Regular, weekly or bi-weekly. This rhythm is what tells your nervous system and theirs that this relationship matters, that it is reliable, that it is real. But here is where it gets more interesting. Studies of adults deepening their friendships in their 50s and 60s show that shared activities are more powerful than purely social gatherings, especially for men and for people who identify as introverts. A dinner out where you just talk can be pleasant. A dinner where you are also volunteering together, or taking a class together, or working on a project together, creates something different. It creates a reason to be together that feels less forced, less like you are making an effort. You are simply working towards something that matters. Carol was 58 when she realized that she had many friendly acquaintances, but no one she could really talk to about difficult things. So she decided to join a community garden project in her neighborhood. At first, it was just something to do. But over the course of a year, as she and 3 other people tended the same plot of land, something shifted. They were outside together in the rain. They celebrated when the tomatoes came in. They discussed the problems with the soil and the rabbits getting into the vegetables. And without any of them deciding to have deep conversations, they started having them. By the 2nd year, one of those people from the garden became someone Carol called when her mother got sick. Another became someone she texted with about her relationship struggles. What had begun as a shared project became a genuine friendship. This is how it works after 50. It is rarely through sitting across from each other at coffee and saying, Now let us talk about our feelings. It is through doing something together, regularly, over time, until the person becomes woven into your life. The second element that research shows is critical is what researchers call vulnerability. But I want to reframe that word. Vulnerability does not mean oversharing or telling someone your deepest secrets on a first conversation. Vulnerability means authenticity. It means letting someone see you as you actually are, not as a polished version of yourself. It means being honest about your struggles and your doubts and your failures, not just your successes. A study examining adult friendships found that friendships characterized by genuine self-disclosure and authenticity were significantly more likely to deepen and to remain stable over time. But here is the important part. This self-disclosure has to be reciprocal. It has to feel mutual. You cannot be the only one being honest, and you have to let the other person see that their honesty matters to you. Think about what this actually looks like in conversation. Instead of asking someone, "How was your week?" and accepting a surface-level answer, you might say something like, "I have been thinking about something that is bothering me. Can I talk to you about it?" Or instead of just telling them the good news about your life, you might also say, "But honestly, I am also worried about how I will handle this change." This is what deepens friendship. Not big dramatic vulnerability, just consistent, small moments of being real. There is something else that happens after 50 that actually works in your favor, even though it does not always feel like it. Life becomes harder in certain ways. People experience losses, health changes, disappointments, financial worries, and what research shows is that people who go through something hard together tend to view each other more positively afterward, deepening their bond. This does not mean you need a crisis to deepen a friendship, but it does mean that if you show up for someone when they are struggling, if you listen to them talk about Robert was going through a divorce in his early 60s, a colleague who had been a casual friend invited him to a weekly walk. For 3 months, they walked together, while Robert talked about what was happening, and his colleague simply listened. Nothing dramatic, no advice, just presence. And at the end of those 3 months, Robert realized he had gone from having a friendly colleague to having someone he could genuinely trust and confide in. Now, here is the practical part. How do you actually make this happen? What are the concrete steps? First, create a simple rhythm. You are not trying to revolutionize your life. You are trying to create one small, repeated ritual with a person. A weekly coffee, a monthly dinner, a standing phone call. The specificity matters less than the consistency. Your nervous system needs to know this is going to happen. The other person's nervous system needs to know they can count on it. Second, during that time together, practice being honest. If something is on your mind, say it. If you are struggling, mention it. If you are proud of something, tell them. Not in an oversharing way, just in a normal, human way. You are not performing. You are not polishing. You are simply being. Third, show interest in their life in a way that goes deeper than surface questions. Remember what they told you last time and ask about it. Notice when they seem preoccupied and ask if something is wrong. This tells them that you actually listen, that they matter, that you see them. Fourth, when they are going through something difficult, show up. This might be a text that says, "I am thinking of you during this." This might be bringing them food. This might be just being present without trying to solve anything. This is how trust is built, and trust is what transforms a friend into family. Now, there is one more thing I want to address, because I know you are probably thinking it. What if the person does not reciprocate? What if you are the one doing all the emotional work? What if you reach out and they do not reach back? This is a real concern. And the answer is, you watch. Over a few months, you pay attention. A friendship that is becoming deeper should start to feel mutual. They should start reaching out to you. They should ask about your life. They should remember things you told them. If, after several months of genuine effort, you are still the only one investing, then this person is probably not your person. And you release them without resentment, and you put your energy into someone else. But here is what research also shows. When people sense that you genuinely care about them, when you are consistent and authentic, they usually reciprocate. Not always immediately, but over time. People respond to being seen and valued. It is part of human nature. The woman with the violets from the last chapter understood this. She did not try to force people to be her friends. She created a situation where she was offering something of value, and people naturally wanted to be around her. She created reciprocal relationships because she gave as much as she received. You can do the same. You do not need to have a special skill or talent. You just need to show up. You just need to be interested. You just need to be consistent. This is how friendship deepens after 50, through small, repeated, genuine moments of connection. Through letting people matter to you and noticing when they let you matter to them. Think about 3 people in your life right now with whom you feel some genuine connection, even if it is not yet deep. Choose one. What is something you could do together on a regular basis? Something that does not require a big commitment, but that you could repeat weekly or every other week. It might be a shared activity, or it might be a standing conversation. The specific thing matters less than the consistency. Identify that one thing. And this week, propose it. Not next month. This week. You do not have to frame it as, I want us to be closer friends. You just say, I really enjoy spending time with you. Would you want to do this regularly together? Chapter 5. The Mutual Help System for Later Years. You have now built the foundation. You understand why connection matters. You understand what a chosen family is. You understand how to deepen friendships through consistency and vulnerability. But understanding is not the same as surviving a crisis. This is where things become practical in a new way. Because friendship and chosen family are not just about having people to talk to. They are also about having people to count on when your body changes, when your mind becomes less reliable, when you need help making decisions that are too large for one person to carry alone. Most people do not build this structure deliberately. They assume that if they have good people around them, help will somehow appear when they need it. And sometimes it does. But more often, what happens is that people drift through a crisis alone because nobody knew they needed help, or nobody knew what help to offer, or the right people were not positioned to provide it. Research examining aging without children has found that the most resilient older adults are not the ones with the most friends. They are the ones who have deliberately designed a system of mutual responsibility. They have identified specific people for specific roles. They have had conversations in advance about what matters, what they need, and who should be involved when. This is not romantic or spontaneous. It is practical. And it is what actually keeps people safe. Let me walk you through what this system looks like. The first role is what I call the medical advocate. This is someone who knows your health history, who has permission to talk to your doctors, who can help you understand complicated information, and who can be called if something urgent happens. This does not have to be someone you talk to every day, but it should be someone you trust completely, someone who is organized and who takes responsibility seriously. In many cases, this person needs to be officially named on medical forms. You might need to sign a power of attorney document that gives them authority to make decisions if you become incapable. This sounds formal and serious because it is. But having this person in place is one of the most protective things you can do. The second role is the financial steward. This is someone who understands money, who knows where your important documents are, who has access to your bank accounts if needed, and who knows your wishes about your property and your estate. Again, this might require legal documents. You might need to create a power of attorney for finances or update your will. This is not pleasant work. Most people avoid it entirely. But the person who has done this work is protected in a way that the person who has avoided it is not. The third role is the practical helper. This is someone who can show up in person, who can drive you to appointments, who can bring you groceries when you are sick, who can help with yard work or repairs, who can be there if you have a fall. This person does not need special knowledge or authority. They just need to be reliable and willing to show up. Often this ends up being multiple people, because no single person should be responsible for all the practical help. The fourth role is the emotional anchor. This is someone you can call when you are scared, when the diagnosis comes back bad, when you are feeling isolated or despairing, when you need to talk to someone who knows you and cares about you. This is often someone you have a deeper friendship with, someone who you have already practiced vulnerability with. This person does not need to fix anything. They just need to listen and be present. Now, here is what makes this system actually work. You have to design it deliberately, communicate it to the people involved, and update it as circumstances change. Robert was 63 when he realized he had never told anyone what he actually needed from them. He had good friends, but nobody knew they were in his system. So when he had a health crisis, he called one friend to come to the hospital. And that friend had no idea what Robert actually needed help with. Robert had not prepared anyone. He had not said, "I am counting on you to be my medical advocate. I need you to learn about my condition and help me make decisions." Another friend did not even know Robert was sick until weeks later. After that experience, Robert sat down with 3 people. He told each of them what role he was asking them to play. He gave them permission to ask questions. He told them it was okay to say no if they could not commit to it. One person agreed to be his medical advocate, but said she could not also be the financial steward because she was not comfortable with that kind of responsibility. Another person said he would handle finances, but that he lived far away and could not be the practical helper. So Robert identified a 4th person for the practical help. He created a simple document that listed each person's role and how to reach them in a crisis. He put copies in his desk, in his car, and gave one to each of the people involved. He told his doctors who his medical advocate was. He created the legal documents that gave people authority when they needed it. Did it feel awkward at first? Yes. But 6 months later, when Robert had minor surgery and needed help for a week, he did not have to figure out in a moment of vulnerability who to call or what to ask. He just called the people who already knew they were supposed to be there. And they showed up, because they had agreed to it in advance. This is the difference between hoping that help will appear and building a system that ensures it will. Now, the hard part for most people is actually having the conversations. Saying to someone, "I need you to help me navigate health decisions if I become unable to do it myself," feels like a lot to ask. It feels like imposing. It feels like you are burdening them with something they did not sign up for. But here is what research on caregiving has found. Most people are actually relieved to be asked. They want to matter. They want to know that their presence and their skills are valuable. When you ask someone to play a specific role in your life, you are not burdening them. You are honoring them. You are saying, "I trust you. I need you." You matter to me. The conversation does not have to be dramatic. You might say something simple like, I have been thinking about the future and I want to be prepared. If something happens to my health, I need someone I trust to help me navigate decisions with doctors. Would you be willing to be that person for me? And then you listen. They might say yes immediately. They might ask questions. They might say no, which is also okay. You find someone else. What matters is that you have the conversation before you need it. Before there is panic, before there is crisis, before emotions are running high and decisions have to be made in moments. Diana built this system most deliberately. She was 65, had never married, and had no children. She had watched her mother age without support and decided she was not going to let that happen to herself. So she sat down with a lawyer and created a comprehensive care plan. She identified 5 people to take on different roles. She had individual conversations with each of them. She gave them all the information they needed. She updated her will and created powers of attorney. She told her primary care doctor who her medical advocate was. She even set up a system where one of her friends would check on her every Sunday. And if Diana did not respond, that friend knew to escalate and call the others. Diana was not paranoid or anxious. She was just prepared. And when she had a minor stroke at 72, everything that needed to happen happened smoothly because the system was already in place. The right people were already positioned. The legal documents already existed. Decisions got made quickly because nobody was scrambling to figure out who should be involved. This is what you are building toward. Not elaborate contingency planning, just a clear system that says, if something happens, here is who is involved. Here is what they know. Here is how to reach them. Start small. You do not need to have this entire system perfect today, but you can identify one person for one role. You can have one conversation. You can do one piece of the legal work. Think about which role feels most urgent to you. Which one would cause the most chaos if it was not in place? For many people, it is the medical advocate. For others, it is the financial steward. Identify the role that feels most pressing. Now, think of the person who fits that role best. Who is trustworthy? Who is organized? Who would take responsibility seriously? Who would actually follow through? Do not overthink this. Your first choice does not have to be perfect. You can adjust later. But identify one person and have one conversation this week, not next month. Not when you have time to prepare the perfect words. This week. Tell them what role you are imagining for them and ask if they would be willing to talk more about it. That is the beginning of your system. Chapter 6. Talking about the hard stuff. By now, you have built a chosen family. You have deepened friendships. You have designed a system of mutual help. But none of this works if you cannot talk about the things that matter most. And this is where most people get stuck. Because talking about aging, about illness, about the possibility of dependency, about the final chapters of life. These conversations feel heavy and uncomfortable, and like they might push people away. The silence is understandable. Our culture does not give us much practice with this kind of conversation. We are taught to stay positive, to focus on the good, to avoid downer topics. We see it as burdening others with our worries. We imagine that naming our fears will make them more real. So we stay quiet. And the silence itself becomes a problem. But here is what researchers examining communication in aging have found. People who talk openly about their needs, their fears, and their wishes with the people around them have better health outcomes, less depression, and stronger support networks. The conversations themselves are protective. They are not a burden. They are a lifeline. The problem is that most people have never learned how to have these conversations. They do not know what words to use. They do not know how to start. They do not know how to navigate the emotional weight of it. So let me give you the actual language that works. First, acknowledge that this is difficult territory. You might say something like, "I want to talk about something that is important to me, and I know it might feel heavy. But I need to have this conversation with you because you matter to me." This does what researchers call priming the other person. You are telling them that this conversation is serious, that their attention matters, and that you trust them enough to go there. Then you can move into what is actually on your mind. Instead of starting with fear or catastrophe, start with what you actually need. You might say, "As I get older, I want to make sure I have people around me who know what matters to me and who are willing to help if things get difficult. I want that person to be you, at least in this particular way." This frames it as a positive choice, not as panic or despair. Then you get specific. You do not say, "I am worried about the future." You say, "If I ever have a health crisis, I need someone to help me navigate what doctors are telling me and to make sure my wishes are respected." Or, "If I become unable to manage my finances, I need someone I trust to step in and help." Or, "When I am struggling emotionally, I need to know I can call you and that you will listen without trying to fix it." Specificity matters because it removes ambiguity. The other person knows exactly what you are asking for. They can picture it. They can decide if they can actually do it. Then, and this is important, you have to give them permission to say no. You might say, "I also want you to know that if this does not feel like something you can commit to, that is completely okay. I would rather know now than have you agree and then feel resentful later." This removes the pressure. It makes it safe for them to be honest with you. Diana, the woman I mentioned in the last chapter, did something particularly effective in her conversations. After she told each person what role she was asking them to play, she asked them to tell her back what they had heard. Not to check if they were listening, but to make sure they actually understood what she was asking. She asked them to say in their own words what they thought their responsibility would be. And that small act of repetition and clarification prevented enormous confusion later on. Now, there is another kind of conversation that many people struggle with, and that is talking about what you want when your body or mind starts to change. And here is where language becomes especially important, because you want to talk about this realistically without using language that feels clinical or cold or like you are giving up. Instead of saying, "I am thinking about the end of my life," you might say, "I want to talk about how I want to spend my time and energy as I get older. What matters to me? What am I not willing to compromise on? What would feel like a good life, even if it is not the life I have now?" Instead of saying, "I do not want to be a burden," you might say, "I want to make sure that if I need help, we have a system in place that does not overwhelm any one person. I want to know that the people helping me have chosen to, and that they have time and energy to give." Instead of saying, "When I am dying," you might say, "When my body is no longer able to do what it used to, or in my final years, or in whatever language feels more comfortable to you." Marcus was 67 when he had a conversation with his closest friend about what he wanted his later years to look like. Instead of talking about dying or illness, they talked about what made life feel worth living. Marcus said, "I want to be able to sit outside. I want to be able to read. I want to have people around me. If I cannot do those things anymore, I do not want to be kept alive just for the sake of it. His friend did not panic or try to talk him out of it. They just listened and asked, "What can I do to help make sure that happens?" And that conversation became the foundation for every decision that came later. The point is this: you can talk about difficult things without being morbid or depressing. You can acknowledge reality without spiraling into fear. You can plan for worst-case scenarios while still focusing on creating the best possible present. Here is what also matters in these conversations. You have to listen as much as you talk. When someone shares something difficult with you, the impulse is often to try to fix it, to offer solutions, to make them feel better. But what research on grief and difficult conversations has found is that people need to be heard more than they need to be fixed. If someone tells you they are scared about aging, you do not have to convince them that it will be fine. You just have to say, "I hear you. That makes sense. I am here." And that is often enough. Robert had this experience with one of his friends. When he finally told this friend about his health concerns, the friend immediately started offering solutions. "Well, you could move to a place with better health care, or you could try this new treatment, or have you thought about this?" Robert felt more overwhelmed, not less. What he actually needed was for his friend to just sit with him in the worry for a while. Once the friend realized this and changed approach, they became closer, not more distant. This is the skill that actually deepens chosen family. The ability to stay present with someone's difficulty without needing to solve it or minimize it or escape it. That presence is what makes someone real family, not by blood, but by choice. Now, there is one more category of conversation that matters, and that is the logistical one. These are the conversations about the specific things you need to be in place. Where do you keep your important documents? Who has copies? Which bank accounts do people need to know about? What are your passwords? What are your wishes if your health deteriorates? What kind of medical interventions do you want? What kind do you not want? These conversations are less emotional than the others, but they are just as important. Diana created a simple document called "If Something Happens to Me." In it, she listed her bank account information, her important contacts, her medical wishes, her insurance information, where her will was kept, and what she wanted her people to do in various scenarios. She gave copies to her medical advocate, her financial steward, and her emergency contact. She updated it every couple of years. When she eventually needed it, it was already there. The people who needed to know what to do already knew. You do not need to create an elaborate document. A simple list works. What matters is that the information exists and that the right people have access to it. So here is what you are going to do this week. Think about one person you trust. One conversation you need to have with them. It might be about what role they play in your system. It might be about what matters to you as you age. It might be about a fear you have been carrying alone. Choose one, and this week, initiate it. You might say something like, "There is something I have been wanting to talk to you about, and I am nervous about bringing it up. Do you have time?" And then you start. You might not get it perfect. You might stumble over your words. You might feel emotional. That is all okay. What matters is that you break the silence. You let someone in. You give them the chance to show up for you in a way they could not before because they did not know you needed them. Chapter 7. Home, health, and money without children. Everything you have built so far, the chosen family, the deepened friendships, the mutual help system, the conversations. All of it exists within a practical framework. And that framework is made up of 3 things: where you live, how you manage your health, and how you manage your money. Get these three things right, and your support system has a foundation to stand on. Neglect them, and even the best relationships will not be enough to keep you safe. Let me start with home, because where you live shapes everything else. Most people have a deep attachment to their home. They have lived there for decades. They know every room. They have memories woven into the walls. The thought of leaving feels like losing a part of themselves. That is not weakness. That is normal and understandable. And if staying in your home is what matters most to you, then the question becomes not whether to move, but how to prepare your home and your support system so that you can stay there safely. But there are also real questions worth asking about your living situation. Not to panic you into moving, but to help you see what your actual options are and what you might need to put in place if you stay. Can you get to a doctor easily from where you live? Are there grocery stores within walking distance? Or would you depend entirely on driving? If you became unable to drive, could you get groceries, medications, and medical care? Is your home physically set up for aging? Can you navigate stairs? Will you be able to use the shower if your balance changes? Are there people nearby, neighbors, friends, service providers, who could help if you needed something? These are not trick questions. They are practical questions. And the answers will tell you something about what needs to happen if you want to stay where you are. If you live in a place where you cannot walk to services, and you do not have people nearby who can help, and your home has physical barriers that would become problems, then you have some choices. You could modify your home, install grab bars, move your bedroom downstairs, hire someone to help with yard work. You could strengthen your relationships with neighbors so that someone knows you and would notice if you stopped going outside. You could build a system where your chosen family has a plan for helping you with transportation and errands. You could explore whether there are services in your area, meal delivery, grocery delivery, house cleaning, that could help if your mobility changed. Or you could decide that moving makes sense. But the key word is decide. Not panic, not pressure from others, not a crisis forcing your hand. A real decision, made while you still have energy and options. Some people find that moving is worth it. Diana made a strategic move in her 50s because she was thinking ahead. She sold the house she had lived in for 20 years and moved to a small city where she had friends and where there was a thriving community of intentional aging. She lives in an apartment instead of a house, which means less maintenance. She is walking distance from restaurants, a library, a doctor's office, and a community center. And she deliberately built relationships with neighbors. If she needs something, she has people to call. Because of where she lives, she can still drive or walk most places. She did not wait until she was too frail to move. She moved while she was still strong and could build the life she wanted. But Diana made this choice. She was not pushed into it by fear or by someone else's expectations. She thought about what would make her life easier and safer. And then she acted. Other people stay in their homes and build support systems around them. They have neighbors they check in with. They have arrangements with their chosen family for help with physical tasks. They modify their homes to make them safer. They use services to handle things they cannot do themselves. This works too, as long as it is a deliberate choice, not an accident that happens because someone was too attached to move. The point is this. Think about your living situation not as something fixed and unchangeable, but as something you can shape. What matters most to you? Is it staying in your home? Is it having walkable access to services? Is it living near friends? Is it affordability? Once you know what matters, you can make choices that support it. Now, on health. Managing your health well is not optional if you want to age well without children, because your body is part of your support system. It sounds obvious, but most people neglect this. What does managing your health actually mean? It means regular checkups, not waiting until something is wrong. It means knowing your numbers, your blood pressure, your cholesterol, your blood sugar. It means having a primary care doctor who knows your history. It means preventive care, flu shots, cancer screenings, vaccinations. It means staying physically active in ways that actually work for you. Not punishing yourself at the gym, but moving your body in ways you enjoy. Walking, swimming, dancing, gardening, whatever keeps you engaged. It also means being honest about your health. If you have pain, you mention it. If you are having memory lapses, you do not just brush them off. If you are feeling depressed or anxious, you address it. Because ignoring these things does not make them go away. It just means they get worse before anyone finds out about them. And it means building a relationship with your healthcare providers. This is where having that medical advocate becomes crucial. You give your primary care doctor permission to discuss your health with this trusted person. You make sure your doctor knows that you do not have children and that you have a specific support system in place. You tell them who to call if something serious happens. Robert learned this the hard way. He had a primary care doctor but had never told the doctor about his support system. When he had a health crisis, the hospital called him. And when he was groggy from medication, they could not reach his medical advocate because the doctor did not know who that was. If Robert had prepared in advance, if he had updated his medical records with his advocate's information, the hospital would have known immediately who to call. Now, on money. This is the one most people least want to think about. But it is crucial. Having no children means you cannot assume that someone will eventually help you with financial decisions, that someone will manage things if you become unable to, that someone will inherit what you have and take care of loose ends. You have to take care of it yourself, or you have to plan for someone else too. This means knowing where your money is, having a clear picture of your assets, your debts, your income sources. It means having a will. Even if you think you do not have much to leave behind, having a will means your wishes are clear and it prevents messy legal situations later. It means considering whether you need powers of attorney, both for healthcare and for finances, that allows someone you trust to make decisions if you cannot. It means being honest about whether you have enough money to age the way you want to. Can you afford to stay in your home if you need help with daily tasks? Can you afford medical care? Can you afford to move to a place that is better suited to aging? If the answer is uncertain, then you need to start planning now. Can you work longer? Can you reduce expenses? Can you generate income in other ways? It also means being intentional about your financial relationships. Who knows your passwords? Who knows where your important documents are? Who can access your accounts if you become incapacitated? This should be your financial steward, the person you have already identified as part of your system. James did something smart. He created a simple binder with all his financial information: bank accounts, passwords, insurance policies, his will, where his important documents are kept, what debts he has, what assets. He gave a copy to his financial steward and told his lawyer where it was kept. He updated it every year. When he had a stroke in his 70s, his financial steward could access what was needed immediately. There was no scrambling. There was no wondering what accounts existed or what his wishes were. You do not have to do this all at once. But this week or this month, identify one area: home, health, or money. What is the biggest gap? What would cause the most chaos if something happened? Start there. Make one phone call. Set up one appointment. Update one document. Start moving the pieces into place. Chapter 8. Why your life still matters. You have done substantial work by now. You have built a chosen family. You have deepened friendships. You have created a system of mutual help. You have thought about your home, your health, your money. You have learned how to talk about difficult things. But there is one more piece, and it ties everything together. It is understanding why any of it matters in the first place. Because here is the question that many childless adults ask themselves, usually in the quiet hours when they are alone with their thoughts. What is the point? If I am not raising the next generation, if I am not leaving behind children and grandchildren to carry on my name and my values, if all my work and my effort and my life is not building towards something that will outlive me, then what is the purpose? This question can feel paralyzing, and I understand why. Our culture tells a very specific story about what makes a life meaningful. You build a career, you raise children, you watch them grow, you become a grandparent, you leave a legacy through them. The implication is that if you do not have children, you do not have a legacy. You are somehow less complete. This narrative is false, and it is also dangerous because it can trap childless adults in a kind of existential despair that is completely unnecessary. Let me tell you what researchers examining meaning and purpose in later life have actually found. People who report the highest life satisfaction and the strongest sense of meaning in their 60s, 70s, and beyond are not the ones who measure their worth by their biological descendants. They are the ones who feel connected to something larger than themselves. They are the ones who have contributed to other people's lives, who have created, built, taught, mentored, supported, or changed something in the world around them. Howard spent his career as a high school teacher. He never had children, but he taught thousands of students over 40 years. Many of them stayed in touch. Some of them told him he had changed their lives. When Howard retired, one of his former students, now an adult with children of her own, told him something that struck him deeply. "The things you taught me, I teach my kids. Your impact is in my family. Your influence is going forward." Howard had created a legacy through teaching that was just as real and just as meaningful as any biological legacy could have been. Patricia was an artist who never had children. She painted for 50 years. Her work now hangs in galleries. People she has never met are moved by her paintings. They think about the world differently because of what she created. That is a legacy, just as permanent and just as consequential as any name passed down through generations. Sarah spent her career in nonprofit work, helping homeless populations find housing and rebuild their lives. She did not have biological children, but she helped hundreds of people build better lives. Some of those people went on to help others. The ripples of her work extended far beyond what she could have ever known or measured. The point is this: legacy is not about biology. It is about impact. It is about the mark you leave on the people around you and the world you inhabit. And here is what is especially important for you to understand. The work you have been doing throughout this book. The work of building a chosen family, of deepening friendships, of creating systems of mutual care. This is itself a form of legacy. You are creating a model. You are showing the people around you that it is possible to age well without children. You are demonstrating that community can be intentional. You are proving that chosen family is real family. Think about what happens when you implement what you have learned in this book. You deepen a friendship with someone. That person feels seen and valued in a way they might not have before. They experience what it feels like to matter to someone. That changes them. They may go on to deepen their own friendships. They may become a better friend to someone else, build their own chosen family. The impact ripples outward in ways you will never fully know. You create a system of mutual help. You show your medical advocate, your financial steward, your practical helper, that they are trusted and needed. You give them the experience of mattering in a real, tangible way. That changes how they see themselves and how they approach their own relationships and responsibilities. You have a difficult conversation with someone about aging or mortality or fear. You model vulnerability. You show them that it is possible to talk about hard things without falling apart. You give them permission to do the same. That conversation might be the one that helps them build their own support system. It might be the one that helps them feel less alone. This is legacy. This is meaning. This is a life that matters. There is also something else that happens when you do this work. And it is more subtle, but just as important. You shift your own sense of agency. You move from a stance of waiting to see who shows up, waiting for life to happen to you, waiting to see if you will be okay, to a stance of creating. You are actively shaping your life. You are deciding what matters. You are building what you need. You are choosing your family. You are choosing your meaning. This shift alone changes everything. Because a life that is created intentionally feels different from a life that is lived by accident. It feels more purposeful, more real, more yours. Eleanor was 62 when she realized she had spent her whole life assuming that her life would eventually feel complete once she met a partner and had children. When she realized that was probably not going to happen, she fell into a depression. She felt like she had failed somehow. She felt like her life did not matter. But then something shifted. She decided to stop waiting for her life to begin and to start creating it. She deepened friendships that had been on the surface for years. She volunteered with a local literacy program, teaching adults to read. She took a class in photography, something she had always wanted to do. She created a chosen family with 3 close friends and had explicit conversations about how they would support each other through aging. She moved to a smaller apartment in a walkable neighborhood where she could be part of a community. 10 years later, Eleanor described her life as richer and more purposeful than she had ever imagined it could be. Not because everything was perfect, but because it was intentional. It was chosen. It was hers. And here is the thing about Eleanor's story that matters. It is not special. It is not exceptional. What Eleanor did is what anyone can do. She decided that her life mattered. She decided to build it intentionally. She decided to create meaning instead of waiting for it to arrive. You can do the same. So here is what I want you to think about as you move forward from this book. What brings you alive? What makes you feel like you are contributing something? What do you want to be known for? Not in some grand public sense necessarily, but in your own circle, among the people who know you. Do you want to be known as someone who is dependable? Who shows up for people? Who listens? Who laughs? Who builds community? Who takes care of themselves? Your life has a legacy whether you intend it or not. You are already influencing the people around you. The question is whether you are going to do it consciously or accidentally, whether you are going to choose what that influence is, or whether you are going to leave it to chance. This is your opportunity. This is your life. And it matters. Think about one person whose life has been changed by knowing you. Someone who sees you differently, who acts differently, who believes in themselves more because you showed up for them, or believed in them, or treated them well. Just one person. Think about that. And then think about the ripples. Think about who they might influence. Think about the legacy that started with you. That is your impact. That is why you matter. Chapter 9. Your personal map. Building your chosen family. By now you have the pieces. You understand the why. You understand the how. You know what a chosen family looks like. You know how to deepen friendships. You know how to create a system of mutual help. You know what to talk about and how to talk about it. You understand that your life matters and that you are building a legacy. But understanding is not the same as doing, and theory is not the same as action. This chapter is about translating everything into something concrete that you can actually work with. Something that takes all the abstract concepts and turns them into a map you can follow, a path that leads from where you are now to where you want to be. I want you to think of this map as having 4 layers, each one building on the one before it. And each layer is something you can start working on this week without overwhelming yourself or requiring months of preparation. The first layer is clarity, which simply means knowing who is already in your life and how you genuinely feel about those relationships. You are going to make 3 lists, and each one is going to tell you something important about where you already stand. The first list is people you genuinely enjoy spending time with, not people you feel obligated to see or people who drain your energy when you are around them. Just people where, when you think about seeing them, there is a sense of ease or pleasure or interest, a feeling that the time will be worth your while. Write down their names. How many did you come up with? 3? 10? 20? There is no right answer. You are just noticing what is actually true about your current relationships. The second list is people who know you, and I mean really know you in the way that matters. These are people who understand your values and your struggles, not just the surface story you tell at parties. They are people who have seen you be honest or vulnerable, who you do not have to perform for, who you can be yourself around without editing or polishing. Again, just write the names. How many? Again, there is no target number. You are just noticing the reality of what exists. The third list is people you trust completely, the ones you could call in the middle of the night if something went wrong. If you needed real help, if you were scared or confused, if your world fell apart somehow, could you call this person and know they would be there? Write down those names. Now look at these 3 lists and notice what you see. Do they overlap? Are there people who show up on all 3? People who you enjoy spending time with and who know you deeply and who you trust completely? Those are your people. Those are where you start building your chosen family. If there are no overlaps, if your lists are completely separate with no intersection at all, that is important information. It means you have friendly acquaintances but no deep connections yet. That is not a judgment. It is just data. And now you know what to work on. The second layer is roles, which you already learned about in the chapter on mutual help. But now you are going to get specific and assign actual people to actual responsibilities. Look at the people you identified on all 3 lists. Which of these people could serve as your medical advocate, the person who understands healthcare and would follow through on what you need? Who is organized? Who takes responsibility seriously? Who would actually track down information and make sure things happen? Choose one, even if it feels uncertain. If you cannot identify anyone from your existing circle, that is okay. It means you might need to build this relationship, or you might need to keep looking. But at least you know what you are looking for. Then do the same for financial steward. Who handles money well and with care? Who can you trust completely with sensitive information? Who would not panic or judge you for your financial situation? Again, choose one. Write the name down. Then think about practical helper. Who could you actually see showing up in person? Someone with the kind of schedule or energy or willingness to help with physical tasks, to drive you somewhere, to bring you groceries, to be present when things are difficult? Choose one. Then, emotional anchor. Who do you talk to when things are hard? Who listens without immediately trying to fix everything? Who lets you feel what you are feeling? Choose one. You might end up with 4 different people. You might have one person covering 2 roles, if that feels right. The specifics do not matter. What matters is that you have identified roles and you have someone in mind for each role. Write it down right now. Do not wait until next week. Do not tell yourself you will do it later. Write it down today. The third layer is communication, which is where you actually talk to these people, instead of keeping it all in your head where it cannot do anyone any good. You do not have to have all the conversations at once or in one sitting. You can start with one person and one role. You can say something simple and honest like, "I have been thinking about the future and I want to make sure I am prepared for whatever comes. If something happened to my health, I would want you to help me navigate it. To talk to doctors and make sure my wishes are respected. Would you be willing to be that person for me?" Then listen to what they say. If they say yes, ask them if they have questions and what might help them feel more comfortable with this role. If they seem hesitant or need time to think about it, that is information too. Maybe they say yes to this role but no to another. Maybe they ask you to give them some time before they decide. All of that is okay. The point is that you have started the conversation. You have named what you need. You have given them the chance to say yes or no honestly, instead of keeping them in the dark. If someone says no, thank them for being honest with you, and move on to someone else. There is no shame in this. You are not asking them to take on your entire life. You are asking them to be willing to do one specific thing, and it is completely okay if they cannot or do not want to. The fourth layer is documentation, which is the practical stuff that makes this system actually work when it is needed. It can be simple. It does not have to be fancy or overwhelming or professionally designed. A piece of paper with names and phone numbers. A folder with passwords and account information. A letter that says what you want if your health changes. A will. Powers of attorney. These things just have to exist and be accessible. Start with one document. What feels most urgent to you? For many people, it is a simple list of important contacts and where important documents are kept. Something anyone in your family could find if they needed it. Write that down. Give it to your medical advocate. Tell them where you keep it and that you will update it regularly. Then move on to the next document. There is no rush to do everything at once. But there is also no benefit to waiting. The sooner these things are in place, the safer you are, and the more peace of mind everyone has. Here is what I want you to do this week. Do not try to implement the entire map all at once. Pick one layer. Just one. If you are starting from scratch, start with layer 1. Make your 3 lists. Spend an hour on it. That is all. Do not overwhelm yourself. Then next week, if you feel ready, move to layer 2. Identify your roles. Then the following week, move to layer 3 and have one conversation. Then layer 4 and create one document. You do not have to be perfect. You do not have to have it all figured out before you start. You just have to start moving. Diana did this. She did not sit down and redesign her entire life in one sitting or one weekend. She started with clarity and identified who her people were. Then she identified roles and made a simple list. Then she had conversations, one at a time, over several weeks. Then she created documents. It It took her about 6 months. By the time she was done, she had a map. And when life got difficult, when her health shifted and she needed help, that map kept her safe, and her people knew exactly what to do. You can do the same. Chapter 10. The Biggest Trap. Waiting for someday. There is one more thing that needs to be understood before closing this book and moving into actual life. And it is the one thing that will determine whether what has been learned actually becomes real actions, or whether it all remains as good intentions that never transform into reality. The trap is elegantly simple. It is the word someday. That deceptively comfortable postponement that takes the shape of someday when I have more time, someday when I feel more ready, someday when things settle down, someday when I have figured out exactly what to say, someday when I am less tired or less busy or less uncertain about whether any of this is even worth doing. Someday is where dreams and intentions go to die, not dramatically, but quietly, through 1,000 small postponements that eventually add up to a lifetime of inaction. People encounter these ideas and feel genuinely inspired. They feel the truth of it. Yes, this is what I need to do. This is important. I am going to build a chosen family. I am going to deepen my friendships. I am going to have the hard conversations. The feeling is real, and it is powerful. And then life happens in the way it always does, and the intention to reach out to a friend gets postponed to next month. The conversation about roles and responsibilities moves further down the list. The documents that need to be created stay uncreated. And then months pass, and a year passes, and suddenly the realization arrives that nothing has actually changed. And now you are older than you were when you started this journey. And the work feels harder than it did before. And the urgency is more real, but also somehow more paralyzing. This is the trap, and it needs to be broken clearly and directly. The truth that requires stating plainly is this: you will never feel completely ready and prepared. You will never reach a moment where everything is calm and clear and you have time to spare waiting in the wings. That moment does not exist anywhere except in the imagination. And it is a story your mind tells to avoid doing the uncomfortable work that matters. There will always be something pulling at your attention. There will always be a good reason to wait a little bit longer. And this is not a problem with your specific circumstances. This is simply how life works for everyone who has ever lived. The people who build the lives they actually want are not the ones who wait for the perfect moment to arrive like a gift. They are the ones who create the moment by acting despite the uncertainty, despite the busy schedules, despite the nagging doubt that whispers that this is not the right time. Eleanor, the woman who eventually built such a rich life for herself, felt this pull toward building a support system when she was still in her 50s. She knew it mattered. She could feel the importance of it in her bones. But she was in the middle of her career, and work demanded everything she had to give. She told herself she would do this later, after she got promoted, after the big project finished, after things settled down at the office. After one project finished, there was another project waiting. And then her father became ill, and she found herself providing care for him. And then he recovered, and she was exhausted. And then life moved forward in its relentless way, and suddenly she was 62, and nothing had changed in her personal relationships. By the time Eleanor finally moved from intention into action, when she decided to stop waiting and to start building, 5 years had passed. She could have acted when she first felt that knowing. She could have deepened her friendships then. She could have built her system then. Instead, she waited. And when she finally did act, she spent months wishing she had started 5 years earlier when she still had more time and more energy to spare. The difference was not that Eleanor needed to experience depression or fear to motivate her into action. The difference was simply that she eventually made the decision to stop waiting, but she did not need that motivation. She could have acted on the quiet knowing that arrived to her when she was younger and stronger, and had more of everything to give. You do not have to wait for a crisis. Here is what requires being understood with clarity. Every single day that you do not have a chosen family in place is a day you are living with hidden vulnerability, living as though you have unlimited time, as though you can get to this later, as though the years ahead are guaranteed and infinite and elastic. But they are not. None of us knows how much time we have. None of us knows when our health will shift or when an unexpected event will demand everything from us. And the only way to protect yourself is to build this now, not eventually, not when things calm down, not when you feel ready. Now. This does not mean you have to do everything at once, or create your entire chosen family and complete all your documents and have all your conversations within a single month. But you have to start. You have to take one action this week that moves you toward this goal. One action. That is genuinely all. Make one phone call. Send one meaningful message. Write down one of your 3 lists. Create one important document. Have one conversation that matters. Book one appointment. Take one step that proves to yourself that you are actually going to do this instead of just thinking about it in abstract terms. Because here is what actually happens with most people. They read this or listen to it and feel genuinely inspired for a few days. And then the feeling gradually fades and life pulls them in other directions and they drift back into their old patterns. Most people will wait for someday, and someday will never arrive. Not because they do not want it to, but because that is how postponement works. But you are not most people. You are listening to this because you are already thinking about the future instead of avoiding it. You are already willing to look at your life with honesty, so do not follow the path that most people take. Do not let the perfect moment become an excuse for inaction. Eleanor did not wait for someday to arrive. She was 62 and she was tired of waiting. She made one phone call to a friend that she had been meaning to deepen the relationship with. She set up one coffee meeting. She signed up for one class that interested her. And those actions led to other actions. And those actions built on each other and created momentum. And 9 years later, she had a completely different life. A richer life, a more supported life. Because she did not wait for someday, and because she took action when she still had the chance. You can do exactly the same thing. You have everything you need to do this. All you are missing is the action, the willingness to do it now instead of later. So here is what comes next. Here is the one thing that matters before you put this down. Commit to one action in the next 24 hours. And I mean this literally. Not next week, not next month. But in the next 24 hours, it does not have to be dramatic or require hours of your life. It can be sending one message to a friend saying that you have been thinking about them and you would like to spend more regular time together. It can be making one appointment with a lawyer or financial advisor. It can be anything that moves you forward, anything that proves to yourself that you are actually doing this instead of thinking about it. But you have to do something in the next 24 hours. Now. In the next day. Because the person who acts today is fundamentally different from the person who waits. The person who acts today has momentum. The person who acts today has broken the spell of someday and proven something to themselves about what they are actually willing to do. That they have begun building the life they want instead of hoping it will magically appear. That person is you. Starting now,